Taeho Kim felt the ship shake around him like an angry beast. Red lights flashed everywhere in the research vessel New Horizon. The computer voice kept saying the same thing over and over. Engine failure. All crew to escape pods. He ran down the metal hallway as fast as he could. Other crew members rushed past him, their faces full of fear. Taeho had been on many space missions before, but this felt different. This felt final. The ship shook again, harder this time. Taeho fell against the wall and felt pain shoot through his shoulder. He got up and kept running. Behind him, he could hear metal breaking and sparks flying. The New Horizon was dying. He reached the escape pod bay just as another crew member sealed the last pod and shot away from the ship. Taeho looked around. Only one pod was left. He jumped inside and hit the launch button. The pod shot out into space like a bullet. Through the small window, Taeho watched the New Horizon explode in a ball of bright fire. He had been on that ship for 2 years, studying old alien ruins. Now it was gone, and he was alone in a tiny pod falling toward a green planet below. The planet looked like Earth from space. It had blue oceans and green land masses covered in what looked like thick forests. But Taeho knew it was not Earth. The computer called it Verdania Prime. No humans had ever been there before, at least not according to the official records. The pod started shaking as it hit the planet's air. Taeho strapped himself in tight and hoped the landing systems would work. He was an archaeologist, not a pilot. He studied dead civilizations, not how to fly spaceships. The trees rushed up to meet him. Big green leaves and thick brown branches filled the window. The pod crashed through the forest roof and hit the ground hard. Everything went black. When Taeho woke up, he was not alone. Tall figures stood around him in a circle. At first, his vision was blurry and his head hurt. But as his eyes got better, he could see them clearly. They looked almost human, but their skin had a light green color like jade stone. Strange tattoos covered their arms and faces in patterns that seemed to move in the light. The tallest one stepped forward. She was a woman with long dark hair and kind but strong eyes. She wore clothes made from animal skins and metal pieces that looked both old and new at the same time. Around her neck hung a necklace made of what looked like small bones and shiny stones. "You are awake," she said in perfect English. "Good, we have been waiting for you." Taeho tried to sit up, but his body hurt everywhere. "Waiting for me? But I just crashed here. How do you know my language?" The woman smiled. "I am Hana, chief of the Jade tribe. And we have been waiting not just for you, but for any human to return to our world. It has been 200 years since the last ones left." 200 years? Taeho felt confused. "But humans have never been to this planet. I checked all the records." "Your official records do not know everything," Hana said. She made a sign with her hand, and the other tribe members moved back to give them space. "Come, can you walk? We must take you to our village. There is much you need to learn." Taeho stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, but they worked. He looked around at the crash site. His escape pod was broken into pieces. Metal and plastic were scattered everywhere among the giant trees and thick plants. "My equipment," he said. "I need to save what I can." "My people have already gathered everything useful," Hana said. "Do not worry. Nothing important was lost." As they walked through the forest, Taeho could not stop staring at everything around him. The trees were huge, bigger than any he had seen on Earth. Strange flowers grew everywhere, some as big as his head. Flying creatures that looked like a mix between birds and butterflies moved through the air above them. But the most amazing thing was the tribe members walking with them. They moved through the thick forest like they were walking in their own house. They made no sound at all. They knew exactly where to step and which branches to push aside. And they all carried weapons that looked both primitive and advanced at the same time. "Your weapons," Taeho said to Hana as they walked. "They look different." Hana touched the long spear she carried. It looked like it was made of wood and metal, but it hummed softly and gave off a faint blue light. "They are gifts from the humans who came before you," she said. "They taught us to make them and promised that when we needed help again, more humans would come." "Help with what?" Hana stopped walking and looked at him with serious eyes. "The Devourers are returning. The ancient enemy that your people helped us defeat long ago. They are coming back and they are stronger now." They reached the village as the sun was setting. Taeho had expected to see simple huts and basic tools. Instead, he found a place that mixed old and new in ways that surprised him. The buildings were made of wood and stone, but they had metal parts that glowed with soft light. Gardens grew between the houses, full of plants he had never seen before. People came out to see them. Men, women, and children, all with the same jade-colored skin and beautiful tattoos. They looked at Taeho with curious eyes, but not with fear. Some of them smiled and bowed their heads to him. "They know who you are," Hana said. "The humans who came before left recordings. Stories about your people and their promise to return when the great hunt would begin again." She led him to the largest building in the center of the village. Inside, the walls were covered with pictures and symbols. Some looked like they had been painted by the tribe members. Others looked like they came from human technology. An old man sat in the center of the room. His hair was white and his tattoos were faded with age, but his eyes were sharp and bright. "This is Jinwoo, our keeper of memories," Hana said. "He will show you the records left by your people." Jinwoo stood up and touched a metal panel on the wall. Suddenly, the air in front of them filled with moving pictures made of light. Taeho gasped. It was a hologram, but the technology was more advanced than anything he had seen. In the hologram, he saw humans wearing military uniforms. They were working with tribe members who looked just like the people around him now. The humans were teaching them to use weapons and showing them battle tactics. One of the humans in the recording turned to face them. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a serious face. "If you are watching this," the recorded human said, "then the Devourers have returned, and you have come to help our friends as we promised. The people of this world are brave and strong, but they will need human tactics to win the final battle. We have taught them what we could, but you must teach them more. The great hunt begins now." The hologram faded away. Jinwoo looked at Taeho with eyes full of hope. "You are not what we expected," the old man said. "The humans before were soldiers. You are something else, but perhaps that is what we need now." Taeho felt overwhelmed. He was just an archaeologist. He studied old ruins and broken pottery. He was not a warrior or a leader. How could he help these people fight some terrible enemy? "I don't know if I'm the right person," he said quietly. Hana put her hand on his shoulder. "The recordings say that humans are adaptable, that you can learn and change faster than any other people in the galaxy. You may not be a soldier now, but you can become what we need." Outside, Taeho could hear the sounds of the village settling down for the night. Children laughing, adults talking, the soft sounds of a peaceful community. But he also heard something else. The tribe members were sharpening weapons and checking their equipment. They were preparing for war. "Tomorrow we will begin your training," Hana said. "Tonight you rest and heal. But know this, the Devourers are coming, and when they arrive, you will be ready to lead us." As Taeho lay down on the soft bed they had prepared for him, he looked up at the strange stars in the alien sky through the window. He thought about the crashed ship, his lost crewmates, and the impossible task ahead of him. He had come to this planet by accident, but now it seemed like destiny. 200 years ago, humans had made a promise. Now it was his job to keep that promise, whether he felt ready or not. The hunt was about to begin. Taeho woke up to the sound of voices outside his window. The morning sun filtered through the strange leaves, making patterns of green and gold light on the wooden walls. His body still hurt from the crash, but he felt much better than the night before. A young woman entered his room carrying a bowl of food and a cup of something that smelled like tea. She had the same jade-colored skin as the others, but her tattoos were simpler and brighter. She moved with the quick, confident steps of someone who had never been afraid of anything. "I am Sujin," she said, setting the food down beside his bed. "Chief Hana sent me to be your guide. Eat quickly. Jinwoo is waiting to show you more of the old records." The food was strange but tasted good. Some kind of grain mixed with fruits he had never seen before. The drink was warm and made him feel more awake. "How long have your people known about the Devourers?" Taeho asked as he ate. Sujin sat down in a chair made of carved wood. "The stories go back many generations. They came from the dark between the stars, eating everything they found. Whole planets turned into empty rocks. Our people fought them with spears and arrows, but it was not enough. Many tribes died. But then the humans came. Yes, they fell from the sky in great metal ships. At first we thought they might be Devourers too, but they helped us. They taught us to make better weapons and work together. The war lasted many years, but finally we drove the Devourers away." She stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the village where people were already busy with their morning work. The humans said the Devourers would return someday. They always do. They go to other worlds, grow stronger, and come back. But they promised that when that time came, more humans would come to help us. Taeho finished eating and followed Sujin outside. The village looked different in the daylight. He could see that it was much larger than he had first thought. Buildings stretched far into the forest, connected by paths that seemed to follow the natural shape of the land. Jinwoo was waiting for them in the record building. The old man looked tired, like he had been awake all night. "I have found more recordings for you to see," Jinwoo said. "Things that will help you understand what we face." He touched the wall panel again and new holograms appeared. This time Taeho saw the devourers themselves. They were like giant insects, but wrong in every way. Their bodies were black and shiny, covered in sharp spikes. They had too many legs, too many eyes, and mouths full of teeth like broken glass. Some were as big as cars, others as small as dogs, but all of them moved with the same horrible purpose. "They work as one mind," Jinwoo explained, as the hologram showed thousands of the creatures moving together. "What one sees, they all see. What one knows, they all know. They cannot be surprised or confused like individual beings can be." The recording showed a human soldier talking to a group of tribe warriors. Taeho recognized some of the words the soldier used, military terms he had heard in war movies. "The humans taught us that the hive mind was also a weakness," Jinwoo continued. "If you could disrupt their communications, cut the connections between them, they would become confused and lost. But that was 200 years ago. They have had time to adapt." A new hologram appeared. This one showed the humans preparing to leave. They were loading their ships while tribe members watched sadly. "Why did they leave?" Taeho asked. "They said they had to return to their own people to report what had happened. They promised to watch the skies and return when the devourers came back. They said humans would always keep their promises to friends." The hologram showed the human commander shaking hands with a tribal chief who looked much like Hana. The human said something, and then the recording ended. "What did he say?" Taeho asked. Jinwoo smiled sadly. "He said, when the hunt begins again, we will be here. Trust in that." They spent the morning looking at more recordings. Taeho learned about the weapons the humans had taught the tribe to make. Energy spears that could cut through the devourers' thick shells. Traps that could catch the fast-moving scouts. Ways to hide from the creatures' strange senses. But he also saw how the war had been won before. The humans had used tactics the devourers did not expect. Quick attacks and fast retreats. Striking at supply lines instead of fighting the main army. Working together in ways the hive mind could not understand. "I'm not a soldier," Taeho said when they finished watching. "I study old civilizations. I dig in the dirt and try to understand how people lived long ago. I don't know how to fight wars." Jinwoo looked at him with those sharp old eyes. The humans in the recordings were soldiers, yes. But they did more than just fight. They solved problems. They saw things in new ways. They helped us learn to work together when we had been fighting each other for generations. "The different tribes were at war with each other?" Taeho asked. Sujin nodded. "The Jade tribe, the River tribe, the Mountain tribe, the Sky tribe, and the Stone tribe. We had been enemies for hundreds of years. We fought over hunting grounds and water sources. The humans showed us that we were stronger together than apart. And now? Now we work together, but it is still not easy. Old hatreds do not die quickly. Some of the other chiefs still do not trust each other completely." Hana entered the building as they were talking. She looked worried, and Taeho noticed that she carried her glowing spear. "The scouts have returned," she said. "They have seen signs in the northern forest. Broken trees, strange tracks, and areas where all the animals have run away. The devourers have sent advanced scouts." Taeho felt his heart beat faster. "How long do we have?" "Days, maybe weeks. It depends on how many ships they brought and how quickly they can establish a base." Hana sat down heavily. "We need to send word to the other tribes immediately. The great hunt begins now." "What about the other tribes?" Taeho asked. "Will they come?" "The River tribe and Mountain tribe will come quickly. Their chiefs remember the old alliance. The Sky tribe will take more convincing. Their leader Yeon-su thinks her people are safe in their high mountain homes." "The Stone tribe?" Hana paused. "The Stone tribe has isolated themselves for 50 years. They may not come at all." Sujin stood up and checked her weapons. "I will take a message to the River tribe. Their village is only a day's journey from here." "No," Hana said. "You will stay here and continue training Taeho. I will send Boram to the River tribe and Donghyun to the Mountain tribe. We need our best people for this, but we also need to prepare our new ally." She turned to Taeho. "Your real training starts now. Sujin will teach you to use our weapons and move through the forest. Minho will show you our fighting techniques. But most importantly, you need to study our enemy. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Tejo tried on armor made from metal and hardened leather. It felt strange but not uncomfortable. The weapons were harder to learn. The energy spears were heavier than they looked, and they hummed with power that made his hands tingle. Don't think of it as just a spear, Sujin taught him. The energy field around the blade can be shaped. Like this. She demonstrated, and the blue glow around her spear point spread out like a wide net for catching fast enemies. Or like this. The energy focused into a thin, bright line for cutting through thick armor. Minho arrived in the afternoon. He was a big man with scars on his arms and a serious face. He moved like a cat, quiet and ready for anything. Show me what you know about fighting, Minho said without any introduction. I don't know much, Tejo admitted. I learned some basic self-defense in school, but nothing serious. Good. It is easier to teach someone new things than to make them forget bad habits. Minho picked up a practice sword made of wood. The Devourers fight differently than any normal enemy. They do not feel pain or fear. They do not get tired. They do not make mistakes because they are angry or scared. Minho showed him the basic moves, how to hold the weapon, how to stand, how to move his feet. It was harder than Tejo had expected. His muscles were not used to this kind of work. Your people fought them before, Minho said as they practiced. What made humans special as warriors? Tejo thought about the question while he tried to copy Minho's movements. From what I saw in the recordings, I think it was because humans could adapt quickly. The Devourers were used to fighting tribes that used the same tactics for generations. But humans could change their plans in the middle of a battle. Yes, and what else? They worked together in new ways. The different tribes had never really cooperated before. Humans showed them how to combine their different strengths. Minho nodded approvingly. You learn quickly. But there is one more thing. Do you know what it is? Tejo stopped practicing and thought hard. He remembered something from the recordings, the way the human commander had looked when he made plans. They thought differently, he said finally. The Devourers have a hive mind, so they think in predictable patterns. Humans are individuals. Each one thinks in a different way. That made them impossible for the Devourers to understand completely. Minho smiled for the first time since arriving. Now you begin to understand why we waited for a human to return. We can learn their weapons and their tactics, but we cannot think like them. That is something only a human can do. As the day ended, messengers began returning from the other tribes. The news was mixed. The River Tribe and Mountain Tribe would send warriors within a few days. The Sky Tribe. The next morning, Tejo woke to the sound of horns echoing through the forest. He rushed outside and saw Hana standing on a high platform in the center of the village, looking toward the eastern path. The River Tribe comes, Sujin said, appearing beside him with 2 cups of the warm morning drink, and they bring more warriors than expected. The first riders appeared through the trees like something from an ancient legend. They rode animals that looked like a cross between horses and deer, with long legs that moved smoothly over the rough ground. The riders themselves were taller than the Jade Tribe members, with skin that had a blue-green tint like deep water. Their leader was a woman who moved with the fluid grace of someone who had spent her whole life near rivers and lakes. She had long hair that she wore in complex braids decorated with shells and small fish bones. When she smiled, Tejo could see that her teeth had been carved with intricate patterns. I am Kyungsu of the River Tribe, she said, dismounting in front of Hana. We bring 60 warriors and our best weapons. The river spirits told us the time of great hunting has returned. And the human? Kyungsu looked at Tejo with curious eyes. He is smaller than the old stories described. The old stories were about different humans, Hana replied diplomatically. This one brings different gifts. Tejo stepped forward and bowed the way he had seen the tribe members do. I am Tejo Kim. I will do my best to help in the fight ahead. Kyungsu studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You have honest eyes. That is a good beginning. The River Tribe warriors set up their camp on the eastern side of the village. Their equipment was different from what the Jade Tribe used. Where the Jade Tribe had weapons that glowed with steady light, the River Tribe's weapons seemed to flow and change like water itself. Each tribe developed different technologies based on what the early humans taught them, Sujin explained as they watched the newcomers. We focused on stability and endurance. They focused on adaptability and flow. By afternoon, the Mountain Tribe arrived. They were the opposite of the River Tribe in almost every way. short and stocky, with skin like gray stone and voices that boomed like thunder. Their leader was a man named Dong Hyun who looked like he could lift a tree with his bare hands. 40 of our best, Dong Hyun announced, slapping Hana on the back hard enough to make her stagger, and we brought the big hammers this time. Taeho saw what he meant. The mountain tribe warriors carried weapons that were more like clubs than spears, but they hummed with the same kind of energy he had seen in other tribal weapons. When Dong Hyun demonstrated one by hitting a practice post, the wooden target exploded into splinters. Good for breaking through their shell armor, Dong Hyun explained with a grin. Not so good for the delicate work, but we leave that to others. With 3 tribes now gathered, the village took on the feeling of a military camp. Warriors from different tribes trained together, sharing techniques and comparing weapons, but Taeho noticed that they still kept mainly to their own groups. The cooperation was real but not complete. That evening, Hana called a war council. The chiefs and senior warriors from all 3 tribes gathered in the record building. Maps made of animal skin were spread on the wooden tables, marked with symbols showing known devourer positions in tribal territory. The scouts report that the main devourer force has landed, Dong Hyun announced, pointing to a spot on the northern edge of the map. At least 3 of their big ships, maybe more. They are building some kind of base there. How many devourers? Hana asked. Hard to count. They move in groups and they all look the same. But our scouts think at least 1,000 of the soldier types and maybe 100 of the big ones. Kyung-soo leaned over the map. The same number as last time or more? More, said Jinwoo quietly. The old records show the first invasion had perhaps 500 soldiers. This force is larger. Taeho studied the map carefully. The devourer base was positioned well. It was on high ground with clear views in all directions. Any attack would have to cross open ground where the defenders could see them coming. What about the Sky Tribe and Stone Tribe? He asked. Still no word from the Stone Tribe, Hana said with frustration in her voice. The Sky Tribe sent a message saying they will help if the Devourers threaten their mountain homes directly. So they wait for others to do the fighting first. Dong Hyun grumbled. That's not fair, Kyung-soo protested. Their territory is far from the landing site. They may think they have time. While we die protecting them? Dong Hyun's voice got louder. Taeho saw an opportunity and took it. This is exactly what the Devourers expect, he said, standing up so everyone could see him. The old records show they have studied our people for 200 years. They know the tribes have trouble working together. They are counting on us to argue while they get stronger. The room got quiet. All eyes turned to him. In the old war, what made the human strategy work? Taeho continued. It wasn't just better weapons or tactics. It was because the tribes learned to truly fight as one people instead of 5 separate groups. He pointed to the map. Look at this Devourer base. It's a perfect defensive position if we attack it the way they expect us to. A direct assault from the south, each tribe fighting in its own area. But what if we don't do what they expect? What do you mean? Hana asked. Taeho took a deep breath. This was his chance to prove he could think like the humans in the old stories. We don't attack the base at all. Not directly. Instead, we force them to come to us on ground we choose, fighting the way we want to fight. How? Kyung-soo leaned forward with interest. Devourers are like a hive of insects. They need supplies and communication to function. The base is their hub, but they have to send out patrols to gather resources and scout our positions. We attack those patrols. Small groups, quick strikes, then disappear into the forest. Dong-hyun scratched his head. That will make them angry. Exactly. And when they get angry, they will send out larger forces to hunt us down. Forces that are away from their base and spread out across the forest. Then we can fight them on our terms. Minho, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. The human speaks wisdom. In thick forests, their numbers mean less. And if we keep moving, their hive mind becomes a disadvantage. How so? Anna asked. Taeho had been thinking about this since studying the old records. A hive mind works best when all parts can communicate clearly. But if we attack them in many places at once in terrain where they can't see far, we create confusion. They will have trouble coordinating their response. He moved around the map, pointing to different locations. River tribe warriors here, using their mobility to strike fast and disappear. Mountain tribe here, where they can use their heavy weapons to maximum effect. Jade tribe spread throughout the center, coordinating the attacks and providing backup. And you? Kyung-soo asked. Where will the human fight? Wherever I'm needed most. That's the other advantage humans have. We're not locked into one way of thinking or fighting. I can adapt to whatever the situation requires. The chiefs looked at each other, then at the map, then back at Tai-Ho. It could work, Hana said slowly, but it means giving up the safety of our villages. If the plan fails, we will be scattered across the forest with no safe place to retreat. The old way of fighting failed before, Tai-Ho reminded them. That's why your people needed human help 200 years ago. This time we have to be different or we'll get the same result. Dong-Hyun slammed his fist on the table, making the maps jump. The human is right. I like this plan. My people are not good at sitting in one place waiting for enemies to come. We prefer to seek them out and smash them. The river tribe also agrees, Kyung-Soo said. Our warriors work best when they can move freely. Hana looked around the room one more time, then nodded. Then it is decided. We will begin the guerrilla campaign tomorrow. But first, we need to know more about current Devourer capabilities. Tai-Ho, you will come with me and our best scouts to observe their base. That night, Tai-Ho could not sleep. In a few hours, he would see the enemy for the first time. Real Devourers, not just holograms and stories. The creatures that had terrorized this world for generations and driven his people to make promises across the stars. He walked outside and found Su-Jin sitting by the dying fire. Cleaning her weapons, cannot sleep either, she asked without looking up. Too much to think about, Tai-Ho said, sitting down beside her. You did well in the meeting tonight. The chiefs respect you now. I hope I'm right about the strategy. If I'm wrong, a lot of people are going to die. Su-Jin looked at him then, her eyes reflecting the firelight. People will die anyway. At least this way. We die fighting back instead of hiding behind walls waiting for the end. She was right, and Tai-Ho knew it. The old defensive strategies had failed before. If they tried the same approach again, the result would be the same. But starting a guerrilla campaign was a huge risk. Everything depended on his understanding of how the Devourers would react. Tell me about the humans from the old stories, he said. What were they like as people? Brave, clever, but also... Su-Jin paused, looking for the right words. They cared about more than just winning. They cared about us as individuals, not just as allies in a way. The Devourer base was worse than anything Tai-Ho had imagined from the old recordings. They reached the observation point, just as the sun was rising over the northern hills. Hidden behind thick bushes on a ridge overlooking the enemy position, Tai-Ho got his first real look at the creatures that had haunted this world for generations. The base itself was not built so much as grown. Black organic-looking structures rose from the ground like giant mushrooms or diseased trees. They pulsed with a sickly yellow light that made Tai-Ho's stomach turn. Thick cables or tubes connected the buildings, carrying something that flowed like blood but glowed like electricity. And everywhere, the Devourers moved in their horrible dance. The soldier types were just as the recordings had shown them. Black insect-like creatures the size of large dogs but with too many joints in their legs and mouths full of needle teeth. They moved in perfect formation, never bumping into each other, never hesitating about where to go. But there were other types that Tai-Ho had not seen in the old records. Huge ones the size of small buildings, with thick armor plates and weapons that looked like they were made of living bone. Flying ones that moved like bats but had the same black shiny skin as the ground forces. More varieties than before, whispered Boram, one of the scouts. They have been busy in the last 200 years. Su-Jin pointed to a group of the big ones near what looked like the main structure. Those are new. The old warriors never mentioned anything like them. Tai-Ho watched the creatures through the scope that Hai Young had given him. It was made with the same hybrid technology as the weapons, and it let him see details that would have been invisible to the naked eye. They're not just soldiers, he realized. Look at the way they move. The big ones are giving orders to the smaller ones. They have developed command structures. This was bad news. The old strategy had worked partly because the Devourers had been like one giant creature with many bodies. Cut off the head and the body would be confused. But if they now had multiple command levels, they would be much harder to disrupt. We need to see more, Hana said. Can we get closer? The group moved carefully down the ridge, using every piece of cover they could find. The forest here was different from the areas near the villages. The trees were sick and dying, their leaves yellow and brown. The air smelled wrong, like metal and decay. They poison everything around them, Su-Jin explained quietly. It happened in the old war too. Everywhere they stay for more than a few days becomes like this. From their new position, Taeho could see inside some of the base structures through openings that might have been doors or windows. What he saw made him understand why the first human strategy might not work this time. The Devourers were not just building a military base. They were building a factory. Inside the largest structure, he could see production lines where new Devourers were being created from some kind of dark, flowing material. Worker types he had not seen before were tending to growing chambers where soldier types developed from larvae to full size in what looked like hours instead of days. They are not just invading, he whispered to Hana. They are planning to stay and reproduce here. How many do you think they can make? She asked. Taeho tried to count the production chambers he could see, then gave up. Hundreds per day, maybe thousands. If we don't stop them soon, numbers won't matter anymore. They will just overwhelm us through sheer quantity. They spent the morning watching and taking notes. By the time they started back to the village, Taeho had completely changed his strategy. The guerrilla campaign was still the right approach, but it would have to be much more aggressive than he had first planned. The trip back took most of the day. When they reached the village, they found that the Sky Tribe warriors had arrived. 25 of them, not the 20 that had been promised. They were different from the other tribes in ways that surprised Taeho. Where the other tribes looked like they had grown from the forest itself, the Sky Tribe looked like they belonged among the stars. Their skin had a silver tint and their hair was white even on the young ones. They wore clothes that seemed to be made of metal threads woven together like fabric. Their leader introduced herself as Yeonsu. She was younger than the other chiefs, maybe only a few years older than Sujin, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her own abilities. We came because the old promises must be kept, she told Taeho when they were introduced. But I want you to know that my people think this war is hopeless. We are here to die with honor, not because we expect to win. What if I told you we could win? Taeho asked. Yeonsu looked at him with eyes like polished metal. I would say that humans are known for their optimism, even when it makes no sense. That evening, another war council meeting was held. This time, the atmosphere was much more serious. Taeho's report about the Devourer production facility had shaken everyone's confidence. If they can make thousands of new soldiers every day, how can we hope to defeat them? Dong-hyun asked the question everyone was thinking. By not trying to kill them all, Taeho replied. We go after their ability to make new ones. He stood up and pointed to a new map that Bo-Ram had drawn based on their observations. The production facility is the key to everything. It needs resources to function, materials to build new Devourers, energy to power the growth chambers, and most importantly, coordination from their command structure. You want to attack the base directly? Yeonsu asked. That is suicide, not the base. The supply lines. Taeho traced routes on the map with his finger. They have to send out gathering parties to collect what they need. Metal, organic materials, maybe even living creatures to study. We hit those parties hard and fast. And when they send larger forces to protect the gatherers? Kyungsu asked. We hit those too. The goal is not to win big battles, but to force them to use more and more of their strength just to get basic supplies. Every soldier they have to assign to guard duty is one less soldier they can use to attack our villages. Minho studied the map carefully. It is a strategy of attrition. We make everything they do more expensive and difficult. Exactly. And while we do that, we look for opportunities to hit the production facility itself. Not a direct assault, but targeted strikes on key components. Hana leaned back in her chair, thinking. It will take time. Weeks, maybe months. Can we sustain that kind of campaign?
Can we sustain a direct war with an enemy that gets stronger every day?
Taeho replied. The next morning, the campaign began. The first target was a Devourer gathering party that had been spotted near the eastern border of Jade Tribe territory. 12 of the soldier types harvesting some kind of crystal from rock formations near a stream. Taeho went with the strike team, along with Sujin, Minho, and 6 warriors from different tribes. They approached the target site before dawn, moving as quietly as ghosts through the forest. Remember, Taeho whispered to the team as they got into position. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they can coordinate a response. We are not trying to be heroes. The attack lasted less than 5 minutes. River Tribe warriors struck from the water, their flowing weapons cutting through Devourer armor like it was made of paper. Mountain Tribe hammers smashed into the creatures with sounds like breaking stone. Jade tribe spears found gaps in the black shells and filled them with deadly energy. When it was over, all 12 devourers were dead and the strike team had suffered only minor injuries. "Too easy," Minho said, looking at the destroyed enemies. "It is supposed to be easy," Taeho replied. "That is the point. We only fight when we have overwhelming advantage." But even as he said it, he felt worried. The devourers had not even tried to call for help or retreat. They had just stood and fought until they were all destroyed. That was not the behavior of an intelligent enemy adapting to new tactics. The second strike, 2 days later, went the same way. A gathering party near the River Tribe territory wiped out without losing a single tribal warrior. The third strike was different. This time, when the tribal warriors attacked a devourer patrol, the creatures were ready. They had set up defensive positions and had backup forces waiting in the nearby forest. The battle lasted an hour instead of 5 minutes, and 3 tribal warriors died before the team could retreat. "They learn fast," Sujin said grimly as they treated the wounded back at the village. "Faster than I hoped," Taeho admitted, "but that is actually good news." "Good news?" Yeon-su looked at him like he had lost his mind. "We just lost 3 warriors. Yes, and that is terrible. But the fact that they are adapting means we are hurting them enough to force them to change tactics. If our attacks were not working, they would ignore us." Over the next week, the pattern became clear. The devourers were learning from each encounter. They started sending out larger patrols with better protection and communication equipment. They set traps for the tribal warriors and began predicting likely attack sites, but they were also using more and more of their forces for defensive purposes. Intelligence reports from Boram and the other scouts showed that production at the base had slowed significantly, as soldiers were reassigned to protection duties. "It is working," Hana said during one of their evening strategy meetings. "But they are adapting faster than we hoped. Soon, attacking their patrols will be too dangerous." Then we moved to the next phase. The infiltration team moved through the poisoned forest like shadows in the pre-dawn darkness. Taeho led the way, followed by Sujin, Minho, Boram from the Jade Tribe, Eunjung from the River Tribe, and Heyoung from the Mountain Tribe. Yeon-su had insisted on representing the Sky Tribe personally, despite being a chief. "This is madness," she whispered for the 3rd time as they crept closer to the Devourer base. 7 people against thousands of enemies. "That is exactly why it might work," Taeho whispered back. "They expect large attacks, not a handful of infiltrators." The forest around the base was completely dead now. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, even the wind seemed muffled and strange. The trees stood like black skeletons against the sickly yellow glow of the enemy structures, but the poisoned landscape also provided perfect cover. The Devourers had excellent senses for detecting living creatures, but in this dead zone, 7 careful infiltrators could move almost invisibly. They had spent 2 days studying patrol patterns and guard rotations. The base had strong defenses, but they were designed to stop large attacking forces, not small teams of specialists. Boram had identified 3 possible entry points where the organic walls were thinner and less well guarded. "The main production chamber is here." Taeho pointed to a rough sketch they had made of the base layout. "If we can damage the growth systems, we can set back their reproduction program by weeks. And then?" Eunjung asked. "They will know we can penetrate their defenses. They will adapt again." "Yes. But by then, hopefully, the other tribes will be ready for the next phase of the plan." Taeho had not told them about the next phase yet. If this mission failed, there would be no point in discussing it. If it succeeded, he would reveal the truly desperate gamble he had been planning. They reached the base perimeter just as the largest moon was setting. In the brief period of deeper darkness that followed, they slipped through a gap between 2 guard posts and found themselves inside the enemy stronghold. Up close, the Devourer buildings were even more disturbing. The walls pulsed like living tissue, and the air was filled with sounds that might have been breathing or might have been machinery. Strange fluids dripped from overhead pipes, and the yellow light came from veins that ran through the organic material like blood vessels. "It is like being inside a giant animal," Sujin whispered with disgust. They moved carefully through corridors that curved and branched like arteries. The layout made no sense to human eyes, but Taeho began to see the pattern. The base was designed like a body, with different organs serving different functions. The production facility was the heart. literally. When they reached the main chamber, Tejo understood why the Devourers had been able to increase their reproduction rate so dramatically. The entire system had been redesigned since the last war. Instead of individual growth chambers, they had created one massive organ that could produce dozens of new soldiers simultaneously, and it was working at full capacity. Tejo watched in horrified fascination as newly formed Devourers emerged from pod-like structures, already fully grown and ready for combat. The cycle from raw materials to finished soldier took less than 2 hours. How do we destroy something this large? Minho asked, staring at the massive biological factory. We don't destroy it, Tejo replied, studying the network of tubes and cables that fed into the system. We turn it against itself. He had noticed something that the others had missed. The production system was not just creating new Devourers. It was also connected to the command network that controlled the entire base. If he could disrupt the biological computers that managed the process, he might be able to create chaos throughout the entire facility. Hiya Young, can you trace those main feed lines? Find where they connect to the central control system? The Mountain Tribe engineer studied the alien architecture with the eye of someone who understood how complex systems worked. Yes, I think so. But what are you planning? A virus. Not a biological one, but an information virus. The humans who were here before left detailed records of Devourer technology. I have been studying those records, and I think I understand how their hive mind communication protocols work. Tejo pulled a small device from his pack. It looked like a hybrid of tribal technology and salvaged equipment from his crashed escape pod. He had been working on it for weeks, hoping he would never need to use it. This contains a modified version of the communication signals the old humans used to disrupt Devourer coordination. But instead of just blocking their signals, it will inject false information into their network. What kind of false information? Yansu asked. Instructions to shut down production, recall all patrol units to the base, and prepare for immediate evacuation. If it works, we can create confusion that will last for hours. And if it does not work, then we probably die here. Hai Young had found the connection point they needed. It was a cluster of organic cables that pulsed with the same rhythm as the production system. But it was also heavily guarded by maintenance worker types that looked like smaller versions of the soldier Devourers. I can clear the guards, Minho said, checking his weapons. But it will not be quiet. Once we start, we have maybe 10 minutes before the entire base responds, Tejo said. Everyone needs to be ready to run. The attack began with Minho moving like lightning. His energy spear cut through 3 worker Devourers before they could react. Sujin and Yunjung took out the others with precise strikes that left no time for alarm calls. But even dying Devourers sent some kind of signal through the hive mind. Tejo could see lights beginning to pulse more rapidly throughout the base as he worked to connect his device to the alien communication system. Hurry! Boram called from her position watching the corridor. Movement in the outer chambers. The device clicked into place. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every light in the base began flashing in rapid, chaotic patterns. It is working, Hai Young said with amazement. Look at the production system. The massive biological factory was shutting down. Growth chambers stopped their rhythmic pulsing. Fluid stopped flowing through the feeding tubes. New Devourers that were halfway through the creation process fell out of their pods, incomplete and lifeless. But the real chaos was happening outside. Through openings in the walls, they could see Devourer soldiers running in all directions. Some were heading for defensive positions around the base. Others were marching toward the landing pads where their ships were parked. Still others were moving toward the forest as if preparing to attack targets that did not exist. The false signals are contradicting each other, Tejo explained as they prepared to leave. Their hive mind is trying to follow multiple sets of orders at once. The retreat was easier than expected. With the base in chaos and Devourer forces running in random directions, 7 careful humans could move through the confusion almost unnoticed. They were halfway back to the forest when the first explosion lit up the night sky behind them. What was that? Sujin asked, looking back at the orange glow rising from the base. I may have included some self-destruct codes in the virus, Tejo said with the first smile he had worn in weeks, just to make sure they stay confused a little longer. By the time they reached the village, the entire northern horizon was glowing with fires. The Devourer base was not destroyed, but it was definitely not functioning normally. Hana and the other chiefs were waiting for them with expressions of amazement and hope. The scouts report complete chaos at the enemy base, Dong-hyun said, slapping Taeho on the back hard enough to knock him forward. Explosions, fires, and their patrols wandering around like they are lost. How long will this last? Hana asked. Maybe hours, maybe days, Taeho replied honestly. But this was just the beginning. Now we move to the final phase. He called for another war council immediately. There was no time to rest or celebrate. The confusion at the base would not last forever, and when the Devourers recovered, they would be even more dangerous than before. They will adapt to the virus attack, he explained to the assembled chiefs and warriors, and they will make sure it cannot happen again. But they will also do something else. They will try to end this war quickly before we can disrupt them again. Meaning what? Kyung-soo asked. They will attack all the villages simultaneously with everything they have. No more small patrols or gradual conquest. They will try to wipe us out in one massive assault. The room fell silent as everyone understood the implications. When? Hana asked quietly. Soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in a few days. As soon as they can reorganize their forces. Then we should scatter, Yeon-soo said. Hide in the deep forest until they give up and leave. They will not leave, Jin-woo said from his corner of the room. The old records are clear about this. Devourers do not retreat once they have begun harvesting a world. They will hunt us down one by one. Taeho stood up and moved to the center of the room. There is another option. We take the fight to them first. Not their base, not their patrols. Their ships. What? The Devourers can reproduce quickly here because they have the resources of their motherships. Take away those ships and they become just another ground force that we can defeat. The ship.